Hello, welcome to Elementally Human. It's a special episode today because I have my first ever guest. This is Stephen Duke. The reason I would love to talk to Steve today is he has a really fascinating story. This is a man who went from full-time permanent worker, just like the rest of us schlubs, working at a job, abruptly quit and became a content creator. And we are 18 months into that journey. And I'm really fascinated to learn all the hard-won lessons he's learned along the way. This is a guy who started from zero, and here we are today. Stephen, tell me about your show. Steve, we'll talk about the history of why you decided to quit, but let's get into the show first. What can you tell us about it?
Thank you. I mean, that's a lovely intro. It makes it sound so much better than I think it actually is. I'm more than happy to share lots of tears and pain and drama.
We didn't have any tissues ready. We can get some.
So I create a show called The Factory Next Door.
Uh-huh.
It's a podcast, but we're also on Instagram and LinkedIn and things like that. And ostensibly, it's creating a list of the greatest things we make in Britain. Mm-hmm. So each episode focuses on one piece. So it could be like the coach-built car, or the space satellite, or the Derby boots. So a real kind of breadth of manufacturing. But more than that, I guess it's a love letter to people who make things. I love people who make things. Mm-hmm. And so it's a love letter to people who make things. And also, my background very much is economics journalism. There is a thread there of hopefully demonstrating the importance of having a strong domestic manufacturing sector.
Okay, and where did this passion come from? This is clearly very passionate, personal imperative that's driven this.
Yeah, so I mean, my dad ran a small manufacturing factory, not that small, right? Actually, it was an amazing place, making signs in Leeds. And so I guess there's
traffic signs, or
no, well, kind of point of sale
left
signs.
turn in Leeds.
You know the classic beer neon signs.
Yeah.
That you get and things like that. My
really
dad did that, and I remember kind of looking around the factories and always being amazed by the community spirit you get within factories and the different people you get, and I loved all of that, and so there's probably an element of that, and then. The story I tell is that when I graduated from Leeds University in the late 90s, because I'm very old, I grabbed a credit card with the sole purpose of going to the tailor I would walk past every day on my way to work and buy myself a bespoke suit.
Oh yeah.
Which I did, and I've
Oh,
still got it to this day.
Do you fit in it still?
I still fit in it. I should have worn it. Wow. And I mean, what's hilarious is I went into this tailor and, kind of brandished my credit card and I said, give me a suit. And, I don't know whether he ever asked, what do you do? But I could have told him, well, I work in a call centre around the corner for a mobile phone company. But man, I was a sharp-dressed call centre operative.
No one on the phone's ever going to notice, but it was important to you.
Yeah, but it came full circle a couple of years ago because I was passing back through Leeds and I was wearing the suit. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to pop into the tailor's shop.
Oh, no.
And be like, I did wonder whether he'd recognise Keith, it was called Keith Wilson. Right. I did wonder whether he would recognise his expert craftsmanship.
Shout out to
and
Keith.
Whether I could say to him, oh, actually, your suit did okay in the end. It went to, kind of, it sat on a journalist's shoulders who, kind of sat in presidential briefings and went to the House of Parliament and all of that kind of stuff.
The suit has travelled.
Anyway, so I went there and ready to go in and be like, Keith. But obviously it had been turned into a takeaway chicken shop.
Ah. Okay.
And I thought, oh, that's a real shame. Mm-hmm. And I just felt, is there something I can do? I don't want to be seeing all of these amazing craftspeople just kind of being lost and just kind of going gently into the night. And so that was the start of where I was thinking, I really, really want to talk about this.
Tell these stories.
Yeah.
Okay. So Steve, I mean, that's a really amazing kind of start to a real passion for you, is to tell these stories and to see how you can help kind of bring British manufacturing back into the public consciousness. And it was enough to cause you to quit your job. You're a man who was working, you had a 9 to 5. You decided one day, you know what, pens down. I'm going to go and start telling these stories. Now, was this an easy decision to make? Why the hell did you do it, Steve?
I don't know. After, kind of listen, every 7 days, every week, 4 days, I'm like, this is good.
Every 4 days?
Well, 4 out of the 7 days.
Okay.
I'm like, this is good. 3 days out of the 7, I'm like, what the frick?
The weekend is part of those 3?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's always with you. It's always with you, hanging on you.
There are no weekends anymore when you're a content creator.
And, kind of while that balance is 4 to 3 in favour, I'm getting by.
Yeah.
If it slips the other way, that I'm in trouble. Why did I do it? I don't know. Whenever you have a big decision like that, there's always going to be a multitude of reasons, really, isn't there? Mm-hmm. And kind of, I'd love to pretend that it was a case of be like, I'm so passionate about these stories, I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to tell these stories. Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more complicated than that. And kind of one of the things, truthfully, is family life. Mm-hmm. My lovely wife, very successful in her career. Mm-hmm. Which I'm super proud of, and it does take a lot of hours. Mm-hmm. And that meant, kind of when we were talking about family life and our beautiful son, we're like, how do we figure out and adjust family life mm-hmm. to give us the best work-life balance and family dynamics that we can get? And so when we were thinking about, kind of doing something around this and telling the stories, I'm not going to lie, that was a big element. Yeah. That came into, kind of the conversations we were having about whether I could do something around this. And actually, the truth is, my wife having a full-time job that takes up a lot of her hours.
That allowed you.
That allowed me. Yeah. To start exploring the opportunities of what I could do with these stories and how I could get these stories out there.
And I guess you learn very quickly, it's pretty tough going to kind of make this thing work financially, right? I'm sure there are a lot of creators out there who have to work a couple of different jobs.
I'm with you. I'm with you. My sympathy is with you.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've been doing freelancing as well. So I do little media kind of jobs as well, little bits of writing and things like that, or little bits of training to kind of kind of keep getting a little bit of funding in. Yeah. But yeah, kind of the idea was that when it started 18 months ago and we went we went all in the start of 2024 after doing a few sample testing episodes the end of 23. And the idea was that we were like, 12 months, it's got to start paying for itself.
Okay, so that was the strategy. And
12 months, got to start paying for itself.
You're going to put 12 months into this thing.
Yep.
And how did that go?
That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Okay. And actually, the more I sat down and chatted to people, because I was so unbelievably naive, I was like, yeah, let's go for it. I was so unbelievably naive. Very sweetly, what I have found about the community is that people are so willing to kind of share advice and chat to you. Uh-huh. And after I'd done a few episodes and it was out there, lots of people would reach out and lots of, kind of, I was very open. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me how to progress. Yeah. And lots of people gave me their time and their advice, and I'm hugely grateful for that. But one of the things that consistently kept coming back was, it takes time. It takes time. Mm-hmm. And I kept saying, I don't have time.
Right. I have 12 months.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what were the early months like of just kind of getting this thing off the ground? If anyone who's a content creator getting started here, what were the hard-run lessons on what you need to do to start to build a following and start getting that content out there?
I mean, the thing that really held me back at the start was actually my own self-doubt in terms of, kind of, I really wanted to tell these stories and do the podcast. And my background earlier on is radio. I really missed radio. I did lots of BBC radio. And I was kind of like, I kind of know how to create nice radio, but I was really like, well, am I just going to approach companies and say, oh, hey, my name's Steve.
From the radio.
I've got a podcast, but it's not going yet.
Right.
would you have a chat to me, please?
Right.
Would you give me half a day?
I might get you some listeners.
I'll wander around your factory.
Yeah.
You can show me. And I was very much kind of like, why on earth would anyone do that?
But what was the reception like?
Well, actually, it was very positive. I mean, what I did do is I got an Instagram going a few months beforehand. And that was to try and give some legitimacy to the project. So that when I was approaching people, they could see some content and kind of think, this is relatively high creativity, high quality content.
Yeah.
I might not be able to show them the podcast and say, this is what it sounds like, but they could see, kind of images on my Instagram account and think, okay, no, there's a level of professionalism here that I kind of believe in. So that's how I started to kind of create some sense of legitimacy to the project, so that when I was then approaching people, they'd look at that and think, oh, no, that's okay.
Using Instagram was a way to kind of create a space that they can see and they can understand who you are to help you win those interviews.
Yep.
Was there anything else that Instagram was doing that you were doing with it to help you build a following or kind of get caught up in an algorithm? Or
I mean, there's a lot of YouTube videos and the like out there, which are basically how to build your Instagram following. So I binged on all of them.
Right.
Now, I don't know whether any of them are actually,
Even now, 18 months later?
I don't know whether they're truthful. I have no idea. Does Instagram actually share this information about how you build a following? I don't know. So I will let you know what I heard, but
Steve's
I'm not vouching for it, okay? I'm not vouching for it. So, kind of if I boil it down, they say things like you need to be getting like 40 posts straight away before algorithms start kicking in. And when I'm talking about 40 posts, I'm talking about 40 posts with similar or the same keywords in them.
Right.
So that it's like, okay, this person is interested in these things. I can start pushing it out to other people who might be interested.
Got it.
So I'm hashtagging kind of,
And you're using the same ones.
Same
time
hashtags.
after time. And
Every time.
What's your cadence of like, how often did you need to be posting?
And then the other thing was a recommendation of posting 3 or 4 times a week.
3 or 4 times.
So really, really consistent. So get to that 40 and then be really, really consistent. But it seemed to work for me. I seemed to get the ball rolling. And actually, for my account, once I started introducing little drawings and the photo illustrations I do, I don't know if you've seen them.
I have.
That started to get quite good traction. And so I was then quite quickly able to lift my numbers, not up to mega numbers, but I'm now up to like 16,000. And, I think that really helped when I was then going out and reaching out to companies. The other thing that you always heard was build a community.
Okay.
Start reaching out to people, start using Instagram to build a community. I was a little bit skeptical of this. I just felt that sounded like a bit of a buzzword and a kind of, oh yeah, just build a community. But actually I found that really to be true. And some of the greatest joy I get from this whole project is the interactions I'm getting regularly with people via Instagram who are like asking about the show or asking about something I'm wearing or asking about my thoughts.
Making yourself available, right,
Yeah.
into that community is really important.
And that's been a huge win. I really love that, and that has undoubtedly helped the project.
And what about the people you're talking to? You're going to these factories, you're meeting these people who I'm sure have amazing stories about the family sort of business that they've kept going and through all the difficulties of manufacturing still going. They themselves have communities as well. Were there ways you were able to tap into that to leverage it for you as well?
Yeah, so I mean, at the start, I was still very shy in terms of asking them to do anything, because I thought, I'm already going in and saying, oh, give me half a day, show me around your factory, which is quite a commitment. You know, that I do not take for granted that, you know, kind of that's an investment on their part.
Yeah.
But what was very nice is I was then putting these shows out, and they were coming back to me saying, I love this. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
You know, which is great for my ego. But what it also did was it just allowed me to be a little bit more confident going forward, to then be saying to people, you know, please do share. If you can put it in a newsletter or put it on your social media, I'd be really grateful. And, you know, kind of that has helped. That has definitely helped, because, you know, kind of I've got no ability to be paying for promo or kind of pushing out for ads or things like that. So actually all the growth that is coming at the moment is all organic, word of mouth. So me asking a company to share, and the company being very willing to, because they like the content, they like what I've created, that has helped. That has helped enormously. And I'm very, very grateful for all of, you know, we're up to 30 episodes now, number 30 on our list of the great things we make here. New series, number 31, about to kick off soon. But every company has loved what I've done and has pushed it out to their social media kind of channels in one way or another.
So what would be, I'm just thinking about like the ratio between actually creating content and then all the other work you do to promote it, to create a community, without going into too much of it. How much of it is actual just creating the damn content, and how much of it is all the rest of just fanning those flames to keep that community alive?
Fanning the flames. That seems a very, very appropriate kind of phrase. The flames at my feet. I mean, this may be the part where I break down and cry. I mean, what I quickly learned also, coming to your point, what I quickly learned is there's the product, and then there's the kind of the brand.
Okay.
And because I'm really naive, and I certainly I don't know much now, but I knew even less kind of 18 months ago, is I thought, you know, kind of if I create a nice half an hour show, the product, it would, you know, kind of get traction and hopefully start to build an audience. Which is kind of true in that it's done that, but nothing as much as, you know, kind of you imagine. And that's because I didn't know about the brand. So there's 50% of product, and I think there's 50% of brand. And when I'm talking about brand, it's like all of the pushing out on social media, kind of, I speak to people, and, you know, kind of the advice is things like, you know, kind of take ownership of this space in LinkedIn. What are you doing in terms of short clips on TikTok? Because their algorithm is really good for helping you. You know, kind of, Instagram, you know, kind of what are you doing about renaming all of your episodes so that you're getting good keywords in them and things like that, and to help with Spotify and things like that.
Is that what you need? You need keywords in the name, in the title, for it to kind of read them and respond?
I'm led to believe that that's a really important thing. So, you know, kind of all of that stuff I'm learning and trying to keep on top of it.
And LinkedIn is a new one for you, I think, because I see that in the last few weeks you've started to post on LinkedIn. Why is it that became important?
Consistently in the back half of 2024, whilst I was getting the show going and trying to push it forward, as I said, I was really appreciative of people offering me advice, and the kind of taking ownership of the space on LinkedIn and sharing kind of thoughts that perhaps don't sit nicely into each episode, but are still very relevant to the whole project, the Factory Next Door project. Getting those thoughts out there on LinkedIn was something that consistently people came and told me to do. But there's a time issue, isn't there? It's kind of like, I've only got so many hours. Where am I prioritizing my hours? And it was only until the start of this year that I thought, I feel like I've got the product kind of rounded out, my key messages, rounded out, its goal rounded out. Now I can start pushing out on things like LinkedIn and doing short little reels and things like that, which is what I've been doing the start of this year.
Okay. And I've listened to the episodes, they're fantastic. One of the things I've noticed is you've got a very interesting format. You always start and you seem to be walking up on the factory, or you're at a coffee shop nearby, and you get that beautiful sound of you having a coffee and the environmental sounds around you. And you kind of do this call forward where you're like, here's what I learned at the factory. And then you play a couple little clips, and then we start from the start, and you enter the factory and go and talk to them and explore the products. What are the kind of 3 or 4, I guess, creative ideas that you thought worked specifically for getting people engaged and getting their attention?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth saying that everything is recorded on site, which is a heck of a job. And I knew when I started that it meant enormously, just so much more difficult in terms of, kind of the recording and the investment in financially traveling around, and then the editing is much more difficult. But I really felt strongly about wanting to take people into these magical places rather than just hearing someone talk about them. So they're all on site. But yeah, I mean, coming into the structure of the show and what I kind of felt has worked, I mean, one is I realized quite early on that I wanted a clean formula that I could just follow. Because having a formula meant I didn't need to think about it every time.
Right, it's got to be repeatable and sustainable. Yeah,
it's just like, okay, well, that's the intro I'm using. That's the, kind of the trailer I'm using. These are the markers, the architecture that every show is built on.
So this allowed you to be more efficient.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And then, so I have the same message at the start of every show, which is kind of like a 50-second, this is why I do this project, this is why I do this podcast, this is what it means to me. And I just felt that was important to kind of humanize and explain why I'm doing this, why it matters to me, and hopefully why it might matter to you as a listener.
And I guess it gives them the full experience. They know what they're going to get now.
Yeah.
Right? Here's why I'm here. Here's what I'm getting. The promise.
The promise. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, kind of, I always like this sense of then, as you say, the kind of the opening, going in somewhere. I want to put this magical place in some kind of context, i.e., kind of, is it out in an industrial estate? Is it near a beach? Is it right in the heart of residential streets and heart of community? Because you get these places literally everywhere. That's why it's called the factory next door. It was very much deliberate. This sense of, listen,
down a cul-de-sac somewhere.
They're all over. Sure, some of them might be positioned on the outskirts of a city, but you know what? Loads of them could be next door, and you might not even realize the amazing stuff that is being made there. People like Chini, who make the beautiful shoes and boots. I mean, they're either side of their wonderful factory. It's just houses, and people are walking by with their Tesco shopping.
Very unassuming.
Yeah, very unassuming. And then you contrast that maybe with SSL, the space satellite company, who were kind of out on the edge of a university kind of research center. So very, very different, but I really like that. And so I use the intro to kind of give some context to the listener to that.
I want to pick up on something you said. You said that the humanity of it all, humanizing.
Yeah.
How much of this is about manufacturing, and how much is it about the people?
So it's the stories. It's about the people. But I'm hoping that what I'm doing by using people and the stories is that I am smuggling in an appreciation of why kind of a strong domestic manufacturing sector matters. But I think when you're talking about people and their stories and what they're achieving and how the challenges that they're facing, I think it's much easier for people to engage with that and understand
that's
with that.
That's what they connect with.
Yeah, and so an example would be, one of the things that you have with manufacturers, one of the persistent problems we have with manufacturers is labour.
Yeah.
Getting, kind of graduates and new recruits coming in and thinking, that's something I want to work in. That's an area I want to work in. But actually, rather than just saying, oh, manufacturing is important for, kind of resilience or sustainability and other economic factors, probably isn't attractive enough to young graduates. But them hearing someone who's super cool, kind of at Morgan Car Company, talking about how they design the cars and how they build them with, kind of wood, leather and metal.
Yeah.
Hearing that and thinking, they're cool. I want to work with them. I want to be part of that team because that team sounds like they're doing something really interesting.
Yeah.
Then you're getting them on board, aren't you?
Yeah,
then you're getting them engaged. And then it's aspirational.
Okay.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Okay. Monetization. Let's talk where the rubber hits the road. So you set yourself this task. Check, please. You set yourself this task of monetizing this thing after 12 months. We're 18 months in.
Yep.
It didn't go to plan.
It did not go to
You
plan.
have been consistently putting out content. Right?
Yeah.
You've been following the formula, following your methods,
Yep.
building an audience, covering the great stories that you want to tell around the country. You've got to a point now where you're starting to come into a commercial phase.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I have just done a deal with a sponsor,
Well done.
which means the show is now,
So you're monetized.
I'm monetized.
You're monetized. Congratulations, Steve.
It's happened.
So what was the process of trying to monetize? What does a creator do to get there?
So, I mean, I approached it very much like I was pitching a piece of creative work to a client, which is something I previously did. So I kind of very much created a slide deck or a PDF, which hopefully was very attractive and kind of provided, obviously, key information about the show, but actually a sense of the audience and the community that exists around the factory next door and why they may be attractive to potential sponsors.
So it wasn't just about the content, it was actually about the audience that you were attracting, the audience that you were building, the community.
Yeah. But obviously you can't talk about that if the content's not great.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine, and I don't know, I'm not a sponsor, but I would imagine a sponsor is like, well, is the content good, interesting, professional? Do I want to be associated with it? If the answers to those are yes, okay, what is the audience? What are they providing? What potentially can we get from them?
Yeah, can they be our customer, right?
Exactly.
So what is it a brand wants to know about your audience? What kind of questions do they ask you?
I mean, they'll ask things like, obviously, the geography, but also any sense of, kind of where they're from, what they're involved in, what is their jobs, and things like that.
Yeah.
And what are their interests? I would hope that people listen to the show who might not even explicitly think to themselves, I've got an interest in British manufacturing. I would hope it's people who are like, I find these stories really interesting. I find this person really interesting.
And through that, perhaps they develop a love for British manufacturing.
Exactly. That's my dream.
Yeah.
That's my dream. Because it's quite a specific niche area, I think that made it a little bit easier for me then to be presenting it to potential sponsors as, the audience here, the audience for the factory next door, they are interested in these areas.
Yeah, because it
help you?
It's so easy for you to tell that story because you have focused so specifically on a particular topic. It probably helps you with your algorithm, right? Because you can hashtag everything very, very consistently. But it also means just by the fact of the specifics of your content, you know who your audience are a lot, and I guess you interact with them, right? So you can learn a bit.
Exactly, and I'm gonna stroke your ego now, Hamish, because I remember towards the end. Was it towards the end of last year when I was pulling my deck together and really thinking about my offering and how I can make this as attractive as possible, a proposition to a potential sponsor. Your research around relevance, not reach, was something that I really thought about and kind of brought in to my PDF, my pitch deck. This sense of, with the factory next door, you might not have the reach of some of the biggest podcasts out there, but actually you've got a really clear relevance here. The community around the factory next door are really specific in terms of their interests here, and we can offer you that.
So that can really help you as a content creator.
Yeah, and so that relevance rather than reach is something.
And is that an argument that you think worked with your new partner, your sponsor?
I'd like to say yes.
Yeah.
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 I'd like to say yes.
Fantastic. So, Stephen, I mean, congratulations. You know, it was an 18-month journey. It was a slog, it sounds like. You've had to learn all the lessons the hard way, all the way through.
Yeah.
What's the future look like for the factory next door and for Steve?
Well, the new series is just about to come out.
Amazing. All right. We'll do a plug.
Comes out end of this month. Numbers 31 to 40.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, please. Number 130 to 40 on our list of the great things we make.
Now with a new sponsorship.
Now with a sponsorship, so that's great.
Living the dream.
So just hugely thankful and relieved about that. I'd love to say the company, but actually I feel like I owe it to the community, to them to hear it on the show, rather than...
This is a man who looks after his community.
Rather than hearing it through... I mean, you know, as lovely as it is on this podcast, I don't want them to hear it through this podcast. I want to be able to talk directly to my lovely community and say, this is it.
Well, this is a success they helped bring about.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Steve, it's been fantastic having you on to learn the lessons of a man who has speed run the creator journey in 18 months to get to monetization. I'm sure some have done it quicker, and I'm sure others are still toiling away. But anything that you can help to share to help them understand how to make it work and to leverage social, leverage audience, understand how to sell yourself, sell your brand. Really, really fascinating to listen to and hear about. Best of luck. The Factory Next Door, you can get it on all your podcast platforms.
Your usual Spotify, Apple and things like that. And actually I should say, listen, if anybody is listening and they want a chat, I'm more than happy to do that, because as I said, you know, earlier on, you know, kind of last year when I was getting going and trying to figure out what to do, so many people helped me and gave me little bits of advice, and all of these tiny little bits added up to hopefully kind of me moving forward. And so I feel I owe it to anyone. Not that I've got all the answers. I really don't.
Maybe
but
no one does.
But I'm more than happy to share tiny little snippets.
Well, I think we're at a phase now where this is how the world goes round for creators, right? Is everybody needs to come together and learn the lessons together. But best of luck on your journey, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Elementally Human. We'll see you for the next one.